Okay, quick tutorial how to set up the event policies, the service level agreements, and the work order templates to a dummy technician. So this is assuming that you have a dummy technician called Data Warehouse to act as your team. That's the associated email address, which when emails come into Data Warehouse, they will then get forwarded to the support address, and then that will be read in by Trackit. So just to go into Trackit and to the administration console, we can have a quick look at that. So in my administration, my directory importer, which is pulling in from my domain, I have a group of technicians. So this is my Trackit group, and it doesn't allocate a license. So we can see here there's data warehouse that comes in from Active Directory, doesn't allocate a license to that technician, and then once into the system, it creates a technician with no license. So the best practice is to proceed with an asterisk at the top. That means you can also use an add-on which allows you to do a round robin when allocating tickets to that team, should you want to. Okay, so that's set up. The next part of setting the data warehouse team up would be to go into the configuration. So we've got the email configuration, which is set up with our support accounts, but then we have a second area when we're using multiple email addresses, and what Trackit does is it uses the mail account set up there, and then it can kind of, I suppose, mask, for want of a better word, with a number of accounts. So that is done in the help desk email configuration here, and under here we have an email policy set up as data warehouse, and with that we're just monitoring tickets received from your end users into the support desk that had a header with the data warehouse email address. So if I go into there, you can see data warehouse at tn.test. So when that criteria is met, what it's going to do there is it's going to send an auto response. It's going to assign it to the data warehouse dummy technician or team, and it's going to use the email address. So anything sent into there, it's going to also sort of, I suppose, push it out of Trackit as if it was come from the data warehouse team. You'll see there's an additional part here that says apply a work order template, and this is the part we're going to work on now. So a few things we need to do. Now, it can be kind of chicken and egg, so there's no right or wrong way to set things up. Sometimes you can go back and forth with Trackit. So what I'm going to do is hopefully do it in the order which I think is the most logical way to do this. And that would be done by, first of all, setting up the service level agreement. So if we expand the lookup tables and we expand help desk, we will see there's event policies that needs to be used. But first of all, let's set up the service level agreements. So the service level agreements here, I'm going to create a service level agreement for the data warehouse team. So we will simply call this data warehouse SLA. I'll copy this so I can use it again. So when the ticket is emailed, data warehouse SLA is the team. Okay, so that's the first part done. We can see there we've got our data warehouse SLA. The next part of this then is to set up an event policy. Now again, This could be done by jumping into event policies and creating an event policy here, which we can assign the data SLA to. Or, as we're already in service level agreements here, what I would be tempted to do is simply from event policies here, click on add. As you can see, it has automatically tied it to that data warehouse SLA. And from here, I can set up a data warehouse policy. Now, what I've also done here is I've also created some categories. So before I complete this one, let me just jump out of the event policy. So this is something that you may already have configured. So in lookup tables, help desk, work order types, this is where you start creating your tree structure for type, subtype and category. And you can see here I've got a top level work order classification type of warehouse, data warehouse, and then I've got a subtype of requests. So you can just sort of build these up and so forth. So as I say, these may already be set up. If not, you may want to consider setting up some classification here to support this. So back into the service level agreements. And did I create the event policy? No, I didn't. Okay, so as mentioned, from service level agreements, as I'm already here, it would make sense to continue working from within. So here's my data warehouse policy. Now I just need to put some matching criteria. This will just kick off some sort of times, etc. And all I'm simply going to do here is I'm going to grab the data warehouse type. I could leave it at that, but let's just put it down to another level as well, just so you can see we can also work from there. So we've got data warehouse and we've got request. Now on the right hand side, once the criteria has been met, this is where you can start putting some response times, etc. So for example, if you want an expected response time, you can obviously set these here. And we can also set in various things like notifications. So notifications will be sent to the requester or to the technician or to the escalate to technician. So we'll look at that in a moment. That all can be done, but I just want to concentrate on this part here first of all. So I'm just going to put in some expected completion date, due date, expected response time. So now we have a service level agreement for the data warehouse. We have the supporting event policy. Just save that off. And then again, if we go into the event policies, do a refresh, we can see the data warehouse policy. And again, if I drill into here, we can see all of that configuration all set up here. Right, the next thing we need to do is we now need to create a work order template. So if we go back into the configuration help desk and the email policies, if you remember, we've got the data warehouse policy, and from here we need to apply a template. So again, if I click on the ellipses here, this could drill into here and we can create a new one from here. Alternatively, I could go into the help desk work order templates and I can click add here as well. So there's two ways we can do that. And I'll just simply from within here, I will just create the template. So we'll do a new template, give it a name. And then we start to populate things. So I'm just going to leave that one blank because it's going to come in from an email and the subject of the email typically becomes the summary. But what I want to do here now is I just want to put some classification to this. So when the email comes in, it's going to automatically classify it as a data warehouse type. And we'll put in the request there as a subtype. Again, you don't need to do that, but it's entirely up to yourself. We'll also put the prioritization here So you may have a default priority of 3 or medium in your help desk. However, we can just rechange this based on the template here. So when that template's met, it's going to pre-populate fields with this various information. So we've got priority 2, and I'm going to give it an open unassigned because this is coming into the data warehouse queue or team or resolver group, whatever you want to call it. And click on save. Save and close. Now we can see we've got this all populated. So we've got the email policy set up and it's monitoring the data warehouse email address. So when tickets come in, it's going to send an auto response back to them if we want to. If not, we could just use that from the event policies. It's going to automatically assign it to the data warehouse team, and then it's going to apply this template. So now this has been set up, I think we can just run a quick test in the first instance just to see that the first bits are working how we expect them to. And the best way to obviously do this is, let's just close that out from the admin console. It's going to our mail client. Now I'm going to send an email from this end user, Brian Norville. Click on write. And that's going to go to the data warehouse team. So there's the email. So Brian's going to send it to the data warehouse team. If we click on send, we can see that's gone into the data warehouse email address. Now I have a rule that's configured that's going to send that over to the demo support. So as you saw in the configuration, demo support is our main generic email address. So what will happen is the email that goes into the data warehouse will come into demo support with the data warehouse in the header file. That's how it should detect who it's going out to, etc. Okay, so the email has now been forwarded from data warehouse, so it's gone into the demo support queue. So shortly we should see that red. That will mean that the Trackit service management service has spawned a process to read that email in and create a work order. Not going to do anything on this data warehouse. I could have obviously set that up so it didn't do anything, but I've just done that for the demonstration purposes. And we'll now see that Brian Norwood has got an email. So let's have a quick look at that. So there we are. We can see new work order 42 has been created. And if we jump back into Trackit, just do a quick refresh. And we can see the work order. So let's drill into it and let's have a quick look at what's in there now. So we've got the summary, which is obviously the subject of the email into the work order. We can see that the body of the email is in the work order description. And more importantly, what we can see from the template is it's done a number of things for us. So we can see it's given it a status of open unassigned. We can see that it's been prioritized as a category 2. We can see it's gone to the data warehouse queue, obviously, and there's the classification, data warehouse, and the requests. Underneath, what we can also see is it's kicked off the policy, so the data warehouse policy. So that's tied to this work order, and we can see as part of that it's done some population on the time and date. So there we can see the expected completion date and the expected response time has been populated as part of that process. Now the final thing we can do there as well, one quick check of the email. We'll go into there. As mentioned, we've got the response there as well. So we've got one that's been created from the email policy, but we also get it from the event policy. So you may just want to switch the one off from the initial one, as there's probably no need to get two mails. But more importantly, we can see that it's both come from the data warehouse team as well. So anything back and forth is data warehouse related. Now the final thing you probably need to do there is have an escalate to technician to that assigned technician queue. So if anything goes untouched over a period of time, what you can do is you can go into the tools, administration console, and set up an escalate to technician. So if we go into the administration here, and we can see our technicians, here's our technicians. We can see there's our service desk administrator, and there's our data warehouse team. So in here we go to the escalation, and what we can do is anything that needs escalating will go to our service desk manager or whoever. And then what this does is it means that when we start configuring our event policies, so when we go to the help desk event policies and we go to our data warehouse policy, what we can do there is if there's an expected response date that hasn't been met, or it's approaching it, or the due date, or the approaching time, or the completion time, it means that we can have some calculations working in the background that's going to do some kind of notification and escalation. And what you would do here is you've got these these buttons here. So if you click on the configuration, configure notifications, what we can do here is we can look at the escalate to technician, and from here we can set that when something becomes overdue or it's approaching or response date. And then what that can do is it can notify that manager that something isn't happening there that needs to be looked at. So that is the way you can set up, track it with different teams, to assign them to that different queue, to give it a certain time it needs to be resolved or some notification, and of course set a priority.